Welcome to the Teachers on Fire podcast, where I profile agents of growth and transformation in education today. Each guest shares their highs, their lows, their passions, their goals, and the resources that are shaping their thinking and inspiring their practice. For show notes and links from each episode, visit teachersonfire.net. You can also follow the show at Teachers on Fire on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, please subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm your host, Tim Cavey. Let's meet today's guest. Today I'm speaking with ELENA Aguilar. ELENA is an accomplished author, presenter, and speaker. She strives to help learners learn, be their best selves, and serve students well. Follow ELENA on Twitter at BrightMorningTM, on Instagram at bright_morning_team, and of course visit her website at brightmorningteam.com. ELENA, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to talk education?
I am. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on. You were flexible with the scheduling, and such is the nature of the times we're in, so I appreciate that. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about your current context in education? What does that look like?
Sure. So before I get to current, I want to say that I feel like I'm a teacher first and foremost. I was a teacher and a coach in the Oakland Public Schools for almost 20 years. And that is really the core of my identity. In the last 5 or 6 years, I have been teaching teachers and teaching the teachers of teachers. So, working with those who support our kids and support teachers in the classroom, and doing a variety of different kinds of things to do that, workshops, keynotes. I do a lot of writing. I have online courses. I have all kinds of virtual learning opportunities. So that's the current context, but I really in my heart feel like I am a teacher. I'm a public school teacher, and that's my primary orientation.
Well, that's a good fit for Teachers on Fire. So you are welcome here, and I know you have a lot to offer. We'll get into that shortly, but first things first, ELENA, how are you doing right now? How are you handling the home quarantine and the social distancing and the ominous headlines? How's it going in your world?
It is really surreal. It's just, one moment after another, and then into this like, wow, what is this reality that we're in now? A lot of navigating of the anxiety and the fears, really limiting how much news I take in. And the last book I wrote is on how to cultivate emotional resilience, and that I spent years researching for that book, and have spent the last couple of years sort of getting it out into the world. And so I am really grateful for all that learning I did, and I'm drawing on it hundreds of times a day. I'm like, wait, I know something about resilience, and resilience is really how do we manage stress? How do we not only survive but thrive in spite of stress? And so it's rough. We've been sheltered in place now for a week, and it's everything's changing every day. It's rough. It's hard.
It is a challenge for sure. Do you have any children at home?
I have a 16-year-old son, and he's doing distance learning and managing to, he's pretty calm and settled, but we just found out that it's likely that they're going to close the public parks because too many people are in them, and he is a mountain biker, and that's his primary sort of stress relief form these days. And so it's going to be hard having him home all the time. And yeah, it's really uncertain and difficult for everybody.
That is rough. My heart goes out to him. I've got a 15-year-old son at home, so I can relate a little bit. We're all in this together. It's a challenge for everyone, no doubt about that. And I look forward to circling back here in a few minutes to your book, Onward. But first of all, ELENA, let's talk about a moment somewhere in your education journey. And perhaps what we are currently involved in really takes the cake in that regard. But do you have another moment that you think back to that really represented a lot of hardship or frustration, and then talk about how you overcame it?
I experienced a pretty intense phase of burnout. I had been teaching for 12 years, 11 years, and I I didn't know that I was really experiencing burnout. It started with just noticing a lot more frustration and irritability and sadness and just feeling really disconnected from my passion. I really loved teaching. I still love teaching. I taught middle school and I just absolutely adored being in the room with them. I know it sounds really weird for anybody who doesn't like middle schoolers, but I loved it. And so there was a year I was teaching where it just wasn't lighting me up. I was noticing how sharp I was with kids and how my patience had really worn through. And then I had one student very kindly say something about just how she thought I should smile more, and it wasn't an insulting comment. I was like, "Oh my god, I'm not smiling." And I realized I was really burnout is really what it is depression. We use that term, it kind of obscures just a low level depression and an absence of joy. But I also realized at that point that I was so afraid of being labeled like with burnout because it seemed like, some kind of contagious illness that you never want to get as a teacher. And just really recognized that what I realized was I needed to make a change in how I was contributing to the education of children. And I needed a change out of being in the classroom full time. And that was actually what led me into exploring opportunities for coaching roles. And what was sort of what felt almost remarkable at the time was that I really quickly got that sense of joy and passion back. I was kind of worried that it was like a permanent thing, but it came back really quickly. It wasn't like I didn't make the change immediately and finished the school year, but as soon as I started considering other options and remembering that I could still be in education and be in the city and the district that I loved and just feel more joy and more energy, I started feeling better. So that was really hard, and the reflections that I went through at that time and the sort of conversations I had with myself pushed me into taking a big risk and pursuing this path that I've created around coaching for myself.
That makes so much sense. And I think for so many educators, that is the key. That's the solution, is just thinking about not letting go of those core values and passions, but simply redefining what that looks like, right? Redefining the how. And sometimes that is sort of the solution that unlocks the, as you call it, the depression, or, sometimes I've heard it called a demoralization when, yeah, we're just simply, we call it burnout, but like you said, we can work hard and we can work long on something that we're passionate about and that we're hopeful in, and not have that feeling of depression. And so I love that story for you about how just redefining what you offer and who you offer it to, perhaps in some respects, was the key to getting out of that space. So, Elena, that topic of, as you call it, depression or burnout or demoralization really feeds into your book, Onward, Cultivating Emotional Resilience in Educators. And this seems like an especially timely focus today, with educators everywhere having to reinvent their practice and respond to challenges on a variety of levels. So, what are some pieces of wisdom and insight that you could share from your book that might provide educators with some hope and encouragement during a very challenging time in education?
This is such an important topic for us to be exploring and talking about and practicing. One of the most important things for people to know about resilience is that it's like a muscle that we can build. And resilience is our ability to rebound after adversity. It's sort of the spring in our step. It's our ability to weather the storms. And we all have resilience within us, and we can all build our resilience. And so right now in the crisis that we're in just an absolutely perfect opportune time for us to be intentionally daily cultivating resilience so that we can have the strength and the fortitude to get through this period of time. And so the best news is that psychologists, neuroscientists have done so much research on how we build resilience. And the conclusion is this is something we can do every day. There's things we can do, habits we can we can practice that we can incorporate into our daily routines. And there are what I call dispositions or ways of being or things that we can sort of think and feel that help us build more resilience. And it's really, it's something that we can, it sounds sort of abstract or nebulous, like, resilience is something that you have or you don't, but we can build it and we can start. There's things that we can start doing right now, today, tomorrow, so that we can strengthen our internal reserves to respond to this crisis and any other change or uncertainty or difficult moments in our lives.
I love the fact that you just said, we can view it as something that we are or we aren't. And instead, it's something that we can grow incrementally, right? And to me, that is the connection with the growth mindset. The fixed mindset that we like to label ourselves, I'm this or I'm not that. And that's a dangerous place to be. It's not helpful. And so I think what you just said is really, really profound, that we all have this within us, and it's all about baby steps right now. I'm thinking of teachers out there who perhaps have not used a lot of online technology or learning management systems. They're having to learn all kinds of tools and applications this week, and it can be a scary place, but it really is about baby steps, right?
Right. It is. And the thing is, there are things that we can do that will almost immediately feel a boost from. So, for example, one of the habits of resilient people, and again, so I did research for years into what have psychologists and neuroscientists and social scientists and even environmentalists said, what do they say about resilience? And one of the things that we know is that resilient people build community and have strong community and reach out to others and make connections. And so during this time, we're definitely going through this big shift. And I think for some people, I'm really interested in personality types and the way that introverts and extroverts interact with the world and experience the world. And I think there's some really interesting ways in which this situation is going to impact introverts and extroverts differently. And extroverts get energy by being in large groups of people and by having lots of different interactions with people. And I know my friends who are extroverts are really saying, this is going to be hard for me. Whereas I'm an introvert, I can have long periods of time alone and I'm fine. I'm happy with that. However, I also have been realizing my introverted tendencies also sort of couple with wanting to sort of withdraw and just like, kind of tuck into my little cocoon. And introverts still need to connect with people. And so it's been sort of an extra push for me to reach out and say, hey, can we get on Zoom together? Or, just texting people. So pushing ourselves to reach out and connect with others. And even if it's just a text conversation or, sending each other a meme or something, is a way that boosts our resilience. And one of the dispositions of a resilient person is courage. And I think we're really going to need to be accessing and building our courage. And it could be just our courage at reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, I'm lonely. I need to talk to somebody, or I've been only with my own children for days. And then trying to do distance learning for our students, and I need some support.
You touched on another big point, I think, there, Elena, and that is that, for those educators who have sort of ignored professional learning networks to date, there's been no better time than now to really plug in and take advantage of the communities that are out there that are so supportive. So thank you for that. A lot of good ideas there. That leads me to your or another book that you've written called Coaching for Equity. Talk to us about the mission and vision of this book. Who is it aimed at? And what would you like educators to take away from it? And I guess something that I'll be especially listening for is how can we just simply provide more equity to all of the learners in our classroom?
Mm-hmm. That is the goal. So, Coaching for Equity, which will be out in the beginning of August, is a manual for how we can have conversations that surface and address issues around race and privilege and inequities, and how we can change what we think and do so that we can serve kids. It's a book about how to have conversations that serve children. And so the primary audience that I write for are coaches, but this is a book for teachers and leaders, for anybody who feels like they need more tools and resources and ideas for how do we have these conversations. I don't call them hard conversations. I don't call them courageous conversations, in part because I think that the adjective we use sets us up to have a certain experience. And so for years, we've been saying, oh, these are hard conversations. These are courageous. Like, yes, they do need to be courageous. Yes, they can be hard. They can also be healing conversations. They can be conversations that are a relief. I find them to be a relief because race is so taboo. And so once we finally start talking about it, I, as a person of color, as the mother of a Black son, I feel so relieved. It's like, oh, yes, this conversation might be messy. It might go in different directions. There are going to be feelings, there are going to be emotions, but we're talking about it. Let's talk about these things. One of the first things I do in the book is define equity because, like many terms, it's a term that's used widely and loosely without common definition. So the first thing that I want people to do is get on board with a shared definition of equity. And my very sort of the most simplistic definition I can give you right now is that every single child gets whatever they need and deserve every day so that they will thrive in schools. And that is every child, regardless of their race or ethnicity or zip code or languages spoken at home, regardless of their gender or sexual orientation or ability. Every child, every day, period. And it's a really ambitious goal. And I also think it can be accomplished. And I think it's what we morally know we want to do. We want to create places where children are seen in their full humanity. We just don't know how. And that's what I try to provide people is like, I know, I really believe that we have deeply shared visions and missions, and some of the how we might have different ideas about. But I think that more than anything, we just don't know how. We don't have enough tools. And so what people always ask me is like, what would you say when someone says, well, these parents, they don't care about their kids. They say, so what would you say? And what they're asking for is the how. How do we respond? What do we say? And so that's what this book is, that's what's in it.
If you had one practical strategy, and as you said, the book is aimed primarily at coaches, but thinking about educators, and I'm sure you've spent countless hours thinking through this topic. If there's one practical bit of advice, perhaps when you think about educators across America and some of the blind spots that seem to come up over and over, is there one strategy that you would like teachers to think about?
Yeah, I don't think I can suggest one strategy because what we really need to be doing is exploring our belief systems, and every action we take emerges from a belief, whether we're conscious of it or not. So we're walking around doing things all the time without awareness of the belief that's underneath it. And what we need to do, the model of coaching that I've developed, transformational coaching, is about helping educators surface and explore those underlying beliefs. And that's hard work. And so that's what I would push people to start doing, the kind of learning it sounds like that you are doing around race and privilege and identity, and starting to understand the function of white supremacy and the way that we have all suffered under it, in it, and the way that everybody's sort of freedom and well-being is related to how we dismantle white supremacy and other systems of oppression. So it's not kind of an easy strategy to do, but just to start questioning what we believe and reading things and learning about things that will help us explore and unpack and expand our beliefs.
No, I think that's a perfect answer. It's funny, I was just reading Limitless Mind by Joe Bowler, and she said, among other things, she was talking about some of the gender assumptions that exist from kindergarten all the way through post-secondary education. And she said, one of the facts that stuck with me was that the phrase "Is my boy a child genius" is Googled approximately 2.5 times more than the same phrase for girls. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
So, it's just those blind spots that I think we want to, as you talked about, just continually pry at and pull away. And yeah, I think that's a journey for every educator. I don't think there's a place where we arrive where we're fully where we have no blind spots left.
Yeah, definitely.
Elena, let's shift gears again and talk about what else you're involved in right now. How are you looking to grow professionally, or talk about a specific project that you're currently involved in?
I am having a lot of fun actually exploring different ways to provide learning experiences virtually. And so, learning is one of the habits of resilient educators. Anytime we can put ourselves in a stance of saying, what can I learn? How can I grow? It helps us boost our resilience. And so right now I'm doing all kinds of thinking and learning around how do we move into the virtual world for professional development for folks. And I'm actually finding it to be really fun. Like, it's really bringing, I've got some ideas that I'm really excited about trying out. We're doing this coaching toolkit summit starting in the beginning of April, where we've got like 16 sessions lined up and all these different structures that we're going to play with, and just see how do we bring people together virtually for learning. So that's what I'm working on. I'm having fun with it.
Very, very cool. Elena, outside of education, what's another area of learning for you? What is it that ignites your passions when you leave education and really brings you alive as a human being?
I have to say writing. I mean, I do that within my current role, but I love writing. I've been a writer for as long as I can remember, and I'm having fun exploring other genres of writing, like historical fiction and mystery writing. And I've always wanted to try out other genres, and so I've been doing more of that lately. And I'll see where it takes me. It's a lot of fun. And to actually play and create is another habit of resilient educators. Anytime we're playing or creating, just for the joy of creating in sort of artistic expression in any form, that's another way to boost our resilience.
Very quickly, on the writing front, to go back there for a moment, are you one of these very structured, disciplined writers where you have a writing time each day?
I don't. I'm very I do get a lot done, but I'm not one of these people who has like strict routines. I do love writing early in the morning. I do really well when I have a deadline for submitting. Like, I had my manuscript was just due a few days ago, and I met it. I always meet my deadlines, but I also let myself go with sort of the what I'm drawn to. And so it could be that I had planned to spend Sunday afternoon doing laundry, and preparing food for the week, and then the muse calls and I'm like, oh, well, sorry, I'm going to go write. So I do get a lot done, and I really love my spreadsheets and my color coded calendars and stuff, but I also follow the callings.
Very, very cool. Well, I like that answer. That's about where I'm at right now as well. Elena, it is time for your quick picks. And here we want to know the education voices and resources that are shaping your practice and inspiring your thinking today. So, starting at Twitter, tell us about someone we should follow there and share why.
Okay, Twitter. Oh, there's so many people that I follow. I don't know how to just choose one person. I am really interested in the conversations around race and identity and privilege. And Layla Saad has a new book out called Me and White Supremacy, which I think is a fantastic book. I really appreciate her insights. There's just so many people, it's kind of overwhelming.
All right, next up, you are an author yourself. Tell us about a book, maybe one that you've been reading lately or one that has been deeply influential in your thinking and practice.
So I really appreciate everything written by Rebecca Solnit. Her book called Hope in the Dark is one that I've read several times now. It helps me stay inspired and hopeful when thinking about how does change happen. She also has written a book about what happens to communities in disasters, and it's very hopeful and optimistic. She also wrote Men Explain Things to Me. So Rebecca Solnit is one of my favorite sort of social political commentators, memoirists. She writes all kinds of genres, and I find a lot of inspiration and just new ideas in her work.
Excellent. And of course, this is a podcast. So I'd like to know, are you listening to any? And if so, what's at the top of your deck?
I listen to so many podcasts. It's a little bit ridiculous. I This is probably one that many people have heard of and know about, but I love On Being with Krista Tippett. I love the Good Life Project. I listen to Fresh Air. This is sort of just my fun podcast is Forever 35 is a light, sort of distracting podcast. I love The Moth. Okay, you said one. I just said so many.
All right, very fun. Well, the very last question is not really an educational one, Elena, but just for fun, what are you watching on Netflix these days?
I am watching a Spanish high school drama sort of murder mystery called Elite. I'm not sure I really recommend it. It's okay. And it's just a reflection of like, I have watched so much on Netflix. I'm kind of running low
Right.
on Netflix recommendations, but it has some of the same actors as were in Money Heist, which I do recommend. A Money Heist was a really fun Spanish Netflix series.
All right, perfect. Well, and is that one you are like, does your 16-year-old son join you for that series?
He and I watched Money Heist together, and we're anxiously awaiting the next season, which is coming out in like 9 days or something.
All right, perfect. I think a lot of families right now are tuning in and probably watching a lot more Netflix than they're used to. But it is something that in a way brings the family together, so it's not a bad way to go. Elena, what are the best ways for the listeners to connect with you and get more of what you're all about?
I'm on social media. I'm on Twitter. Our handle there is Bright Morning TM. I'm also on Instagram. I actually have 2 Instagram accounts. I have Bright Morning Team. The easiest ways to get the links to these or to find them is actually probably to go to our website, which is brightmorningteam.com, and then you can find the little icons there and click it. But I'm also on Instagram. I really like Instagram in social media, and so I have the Bright Morning Team one, and then I have one which is Elena_Aguilar_writer, and that's one which is a bit more personal. I love to travel when I can travel, and so I have a lot of travel photos there. I'm also on Facebook at Bright Morning Team.
Well, thank you so much, Elena. I want to, again, say that I am grateful for you just sharing your time with the podcast today. This has been enlightening, it's been inspiring and thought-provoking. And again, your message on resilience couldn't be more timely for educators. So again, thank you so much. Take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and let's talk again soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Tim.
Before we sign up today, I'd like to share some recent highlights from the Teachers on Fire Nation. Our first stop is on Twitter, where I tweeted, "Hi educators, what is one thing that you have learned about the quarantine life so far?" And it's okay to speak as an educator and or a parent on this one. To that tweet, Marissa Thompson at Marissa E. Thompson replied, quote, "Parenting is and is not teaching. My kids are doing super creative things when I leave their play, reading, coloring, writing uninterrupted. School should be for skill building, creativity, thinking, discussion, and connection, even more than it has been." Hashtag unlimited teacher. Well, great thoughts there, Marissa. Thank you so much for commenting. Next, over on Instagram, I posted a screenshot from Pernille Rip at Pernille Rip on Twitter that read, quote, "Was just told by my district that whatever we have planned for our first week of online teaching, we should have it, then have it again for realistic expectation. I appreciate this directive a lot," end quote. And if I just lost you there, of course, when she says have, she's spelling that Halve, to, cutting it in half once, then cutting it in half again for that, as she says, realistic expectation of what is possible. And to that screenshot, my sister-in-law, Hannah Cavey at mcanmama on Instagram wrote, quote, "Yes, please. I'm a trained teacher, but implementing plans from my kids' two teachers while also parenting two younger ones is anything but easy. The girls end up helping each other, which is awesome, but takes time away from, quote, what they're supposed to be learning," end quote. And I don't have the added issue of needing to apply for employment insurance or having to go to work. I hope teachers, schools, and divisions recognize this and make realistic expectations that foster the incredible potential for wonderful, unique learning opportunities instead of squelching them during this tumultuous time, end quote. Well, thank you for that comment, Hannah. I think you articulated the thoughts and emotions of a lot of parents across the country right now, and I certainly appreciate your support of Teachers on Fire. Very special. To all who have read, viewed, liked, retweeted, commented, or replied to my content on any of these platforms, thank you. You are the fuel to my fire, and I so appreciate your support. Make sure you drop by the Teachers on Fire magazine on Medium this week, where we featured pieces by Debbie Tannenbaum, Caitlin Giordano, Kelly Christopherson, Dr. Deborah M. Vereen, Michael Roussel, Chinichi Okada, Brad Davis, Tom Hobson, and me. The Teachers on Fire magazine is a Medium publication, and you'll find it on medium.com or on the Medium app. If you'd like to join our growing writing team, your first step is to create a Medium account using your Google credentials. From there, fire me a DM and I'll add you as a writer for the magazine. It's that simple. Speaking of blogging, check out the Teacher Blogs podcast, where you will hear educators reading their own blog posts in their own voice. Recent episodes have featured Brad Davis, Lynn Thomas, and Debbie Tannenbaum. Well, I will leave you with this quote from my reading, Teachers on Fire. It's from a book called Embedding Formative Assessment by Dylan William, at Dylan William on Twitter, and Siobhan Leahy. And they write, "The most important takeaway from the research is that the shorter the time interval between eliciting the evidence and using it to improve instruction, the bigger the likely impact on learning." And of course, this quote reminds us that really, the faster the feedback, the better. Great quote. Again, I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you decided to spend some of your day listening to this podcast. I hope that in some way the content you heard today from ELENA Aguilar ignited your thinking and inspired your practice. And I'll meet you next week right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast. Take care and stay safe.